All right, crew, we are here. We are here. Did you guys is anybody here? Yeah. I don't know if you guys heard, there is a little bit of a phone outage across the United States. So I don't know how many people, maybe some people are going to be missing today's episode. I know that I had a client call cancel out as a result of this. Data looks pretty sparse. So I guess we'll see. I mean, right now this is we're already a little bit lower than usual. No surprise here. It's all good. People will watch the replay. So, starting with the wine, as always. So a couple weeks ago, I talked about how there's this Fiano di Avellino that I'd had in New York at a place called Italy that was just majestic. In fact, I don't know if some of you guys saw how Nash's review of my masterclass. Like, if you guys have been trying to figure out whether you should get the masterclass, you got to read Nash's review. Nash does a better job of breaking down my masterclass than I do. He's very, very thorough. So, but anyway, Nash, Days of Game. When we were in New York, we were at Italy for some drinks after lunch, and I got the Fiano di Avellino, and it was just like, it's because it's, I mean, I go back there regularly for it. Now, since COVID, all that stuff shut down, so I've been trying to find it in the wine store. So I got the last Fiano. I got the two Fianos that were in the wine store, and wasn't the first one, unfortunately. So we'll try the second one. Now, thing about Fiano di Avellino. Fiano di Avellino is it's right nearby Vesuvius. Now, it's not quite, I think if I get this, I might be getting this wrong. I apologize, guys. Should do a little bit more catching up on this. But Fiano di Avellino is from the Bay of Naples. Okay? It should even show you maybe on the back of no, it doesn't say anything on the back of the bottle. But, so this is around where it's like south of Naples and around Mount Vesuvius. Now, I don't think it's on the slope itself of Mount Vesuvius. I think that's a different wine called La Crema Christi del Vesuvio. But La Crema Christi, the white, may use the Fiano grape, but it's not as elevated, let's say, as the Fiano from Avellino. Fiano di Avellino is a very, very famous. It's one of the three big Southern Italian whites. The other one being Greco di Tufo, which I got a good one for you. We're going to be trying out soon. But anyway, I like these Fianos a lot. They have a really rich flavor, a really rich apple to them. Now, this one I opened yesterday, but I saved the other half of the bottle for you guys. So let's try it out. Let's try the sucker out. Now, see, I still don't think this is the one I got. I still don't think it's the one I got at that restaurant. But it is definitely better than the other Fiano I had. And no, I have not discussed what's in the title. We start every one of these periscopes with wine. So we do about 2 to 5 minutes of wine talk, and then we get into the dating relationship questions. So, but I've been having a hard time with my smell recently. So I don't know why, because the breathing hasn't been an issue, but it just seems like everything's muted. So I feel like I'm not even maybe giving this one enough credit, and maybe it is the Fiano. I'll know when things open up. And they should open up soon. Hoping so. Anyway, if you guys wanted to check the bottle, I know that some of you guys are really following these wine picks. For newcomers, well, man, let me know exactly what are you looking for? Just real quick, what are you looking for? Because it's too broad for me to answer that. I don't know what kind of stuff that you like. I'll hit that up midway through. I'll track back, but just so that we keep moving. So red wine, sweet. All right. Well, you're probably going to want to go for some bigger reds out by California. Sweet wine is how people usually get introduced to wine, and then they start to track to dry over time as they get more used to it. Some really, really, I personally don't like this wine, but it's a very, let me see. I'm trying to give you something that, you know what? Try to get some wines from Sonoma. You could get, what is his name? I'm gonna think of it later on. I'm gonna think of it later on the call. I know you're gonna stick around, so I have to think of his name. Anyway, they're a California wine family. So anyway, when you weren't married, how to determine a girl's worth? How did you determine a girl's worth when you weren't married? Well, I got married because I could determine a girl's worth. So I guess I had to do it then. Let me think about this for a second. I mean, it really just comes down to the standard things you're going to screen for with girls. So you're going to want to screen for their level of self-respect, and you're going to want to, and self-respect is takes multiple different areas. So first off, what's their self-respect in terms of, have they gone around and really self-abused themselves? Have they been self-abusive over time? That's natural for, we're all humans, we all have insecurities. But how did she really go and act upon these insecurities? Did she really degrade herself over time? That's not usually a sign of a girl's value long term if she's going to do that. And if she hasn't dealt with it by the time she's met you, certainly. So you check for those things in terms of her past and in terms of even how you met her. But there's one thing I want to zoom in on here, because this is something that guys don't really, they miss a lot. And it's also, how does she respond to you? How does she respect herself in regards to you? Because this is a really good test of a woman's character, because if she's really into you, and let's just say you aren't treating her, like a queen, you're not treating her like a queen, right? You're taking her a bit for granted. How is she going to respond to you? If her response is, I'm just going to go along and do anything just to keep you in my life, a lot of guys in this corner think that's the mark of a good woman, and it's not. That's the mark of a weak woman. That's not a woman you want to commit to. So to a certain extent, a woman being able, and I'm not talking about like being a bitch, I'm not talking about being a nag. I'm saying her putting up boundaries to you when you overstep is actually a really, really good tell that she respects herself well, and she won't let herself get abused. So, and I have to say, with my wife, it was one of the things that really stood out to me about her, because I was playing the field, right? I had a quote unquote harem. I was seeing a couple different girls, and she wanted things to go more serious. And when I kind of got, I wasn't sure at the time. I wasn't sure because only because of the logistical issues. I mean, there were some logistical issues between us. Otherwise, she was way ahead of the other girls that I had been dating. But when she was basically like, hey, like, I'm willing to make this work, but I'm not willing to just like be a side piece. I mean, that was something that I was not used to hearing from girls who were pretty much used to just doing whatever they could to continue to date. There's a girl who I ended up dating her in that capacity for almost a year. And I shouldn't have done that on my end, but I mean, she wasn't going to get committed to if that's the way she's going to behave towards herself. So I think a lot of it really comes down to self-respect. Self-respect is probably the big variable I look for with a girl who, and remember, a girl who's very nasty and antagonistic doesn't have self-respect. That's a tell that actually she's overcompensating. So don't confuse nastiness and a bad attitude for self-respect. So, does retaining semen during sex have advantages versus ejaculating? Well, I guess you could say it has advantages. I'm not a Taoist. I'm not a Taoist, although I think it's interesting to study some of the teachings. They are very much about guys pretty much never coming unless they're trying to have a kid, but having lots of sex, just constantly edging nonstop. I understand this. It does build up a lot of energy inside of you. Look, this is just my own perspective, but I think it kind of gets ridiculous over time. And I think that there's a fixation. Their fixation becomes on that versus actually doing things with the energy. So I think that people can, like, while I'm all about the semen retention, I'm all about the, don't jerk off, maintain your energy. Like, I agree with that. I think that guys can take it too far, and it can become a bit obsessive. And then you're just kind of going more towards, I suppose if you're going down like a monastic path, then that's fine. But from a practical perspective, it seems to me distracting. to be constantly trying to edge yourself nonstop every day, right? Okay, but more specifically to the question, is there an advantage of it versus ejaculating? Well, you will have more of that energy inside your body. You will have more of that energy inside your body. And if your girl, which hopefully she is coming with you while you're having sex, you'll also be getting her energy. And look, I admit it feels good every now and then to, fuck your girl, make her come, and then decide not to come yourself. But and I don't know if you guys have noticed, if you've done it, women don't respond very well to that. I mean, it's fine for a tease, right? But if you keep doing that, they actually start to get a little annoyed. Like they want that, right? They want it. They don't want it wrapped up, and they want it, right? And the reason is because, well, part of it's, you can chalk it up to just basic psychology. If you're not coming, she's feeling inadequate, right? Just like a guy would feel inadequate if the girl doesn't come. The other part of it is that when she wants that energy. I mean, the whole purpose of you being inside of her is to, like, she's coming as a process of trying to pull in that energy more, right? Remember, girls orgasming makes them more likely to conceive. So there's a whole aspect of this. Like, they really, really want the seed. They really want the seed. So I think from the perspective of trying to create like a deeper spiritual union between you and the girl, I think it's better to come inside of her, because that's part of the arrangement with her. If you are fucking a girl and you're not coming, you're taking energy, you're not exchanging it in a alchemical way with her. And so I think that, maybe a good rule of thumb then is, if you're being casual with a girl, if you do a random hookup with a girl, that you shouldn't come with her. You should just take her energy, right? But in a relationship, I think that you shouldn't do that very often. You should give it back, right? And of course, you can experiment and play around with this, but the purpose of a relationship is mutual gain, and you don't lose energy on net by coming inside of a girl. I mean, if she's fucking you all day, like throughout the day, and you come a couple of times, then you will get drained. But coming inside of her is not going to, that's like doing that once a day, and so for some of the younger guys, even twice a day, that's not going to affect your energy in any meaningful way. You're going to get plenty back from her, and you actually will feel more leveled out. And the last point I'll make on this energy stuff is that while you want to get used to controlling this energy, it's a huge part of your mastery as a man, your self-mastery. If you're constantly trying to edge yourself, can really be distracting to other aspects of your life. And I'm not recommending this as a general course of action, and I'm not recommending anyone use porn, right? But I can tell you from experience that if you are really, 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 really horny, and you have stuff to do, and you, like, sometimes it's better just to let it out, right? And so I think that guys who are going to practice this thing about going and trying to edge themselves with a girl and never coming inside of her, I think that what they're likely going to do is they're going to keep wanting to have sex. That's usually what happens. They want to go back to having sex again because their body has this impulse to clear it out. And then you're sort of falling into a pattern where you're actually more obsessed with sex than you would be if you had just come. So, some food for thought. There's a balance to all of these mysteries, and don't think it's like a black and white thing where you have to do this or you have to do that. So anyway, how to break up. Well, I gotta take a sip time. How to break up with a dependent bipolar girlfriend. She's emotionally dependent on me. She's not from my country, but I'm drained and I have goals. What should I do? Well, I like the question, because the question is, how do I break up? Not should I break up? So that's good. Because you should break up, 100%. This is girl game, guys. This is girl game. A lot of these cluster B psychological disorders. A lot of these things are sort of like really extreme girl game, because the nature of the feminine, there's a reason why like borderline personality, bipolar disorder, these are way more likely in women than men. And the reason is because it's kind of like it's a dysfunction that's really akin to the feminine. It's a feminine dysfunction, because what you're going to be seeing with a girl is that her energy just she is going to be hot and cold with you. She's going to it's like you're in a constant storm. So if you look at the feminine as nature, this is like choosing to be like in the middle of a hurricane all the time. It's still nature, but it's not really a great place to be. And so you probably should move out of there, right? If that's what's constantly happening. So the cold hard truth is that you are not going to be able to do this in a way that she's going to be happy about, unless there's only one way to do it. If you don't want to like break her heart, and that's to be a complete and total bitch, to be a complete simp, and really just humiliate yourself to her to the point that she's disgusted by you and will go after another guy. I've heard of guys doing that stuff. Sometimes they know they only have to do it for a couple weeks, and that'll get the girl out of the picture. That's I don't recommend doing it though. I think it's a scheme based on weakness. You should only do it if you really have to. I mean, if she's like gonna kill you or something, then okay. But the reality is that almost every guy is gonna date a girl somewhat like this, some succubi like girl, and you just gotta learn to create the boundaries, man, because it was a lack of boundaries that got you in the situation to begin with. If you had better boundaries, you wouldn't have dated a girl who had mental illness. You accommodated her for too long. And so really the answer is just, look, I feel like this isn't working out. I'm really drained. You tell her exactly tell her exactly what you told me, and say, I'm sorry, but we have to end things. And she's going to be dependent. She's going to get upset. And she's going to say no. And you're going to block her number. Right now, you can do some stuff ahead of time to maybe remove some of your things, because you won't get them back unless you somehow make a scheme to come see her in person. Better to get as much valuable things of yours as you can out of the situation beforehand. But yeah, man. I mean, the reality is it's going to be messy, and it's not a matter of avoiding this. And how do you do it as smooth as possible? I mean, there's not much you can really do. I recommend not involving another girl in the situation. That's one way to really make it rough. But just, I mean, really make it about you, and that you want some space and you want to be by yourself. She's going to take it less personally, but she's also going to be more persistent as a result. So you're just going to have to deal with it. It sucks, but pull the trigger. You're going to level up from the experience. I promise you. All right. What's the line for a slut hoe? If a girl sleeps with a different guy every week, for instance, is that a red flag? Well, it wouldn't be a periscope if I didn't get a question along these lines. But I mean, what's the line? Everybody's line is going to be a little bit different. Some guys care more about the purity than others, right? This is the Madonna whore dynamic. I think it's really important to underline something that I wrote in an email recently. I'm just going to give you a little taste of the email because I went pretty in-depth in it. Once you get my email list. But you're not going to be able to you're going to have to tolerate, if you want a woman who has real sexual energy to her, you're going to have to be willing to deal with some degree of the dark side of female nature. Right? It's very, very uncommon that a girl who understands her sexual power, it's very uncommon that she's not going to use it for guys. It's very, very uncommon. And so that's why guys fall for these women, even though they're bad news. So, that's one of the things I see when guys are all about control. Like, people want to control what they're afraid of. And that's why, while my perspective is, I'm not here to go back to, put the chastity belt on the women. that is actually, to me, it comes from the mindset of men that's afraid of the power of a woman's sexuality. It's fear. It's fear. That's what it is. I'm happy to allow it to women to express it as they want to express it, using my own discernment to tell which women are where they're coming at it from, which women are broken and which ones are damaged. But trying to actually control it isn't really effective. In fact, actually, it can be deceptive because a woman will then start to adhere to, oh, she's a good girl, right? But she's actually not. But she had to act that way publicly. So I prefer to let people reveal themselves as they are and not be afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it. So what's the line? I mean, if you're sleeping with a guy every different week, okay, let's think for a second. What kind of other women sleep with different guys every week? Prostitutes sleep with guys every other week. So I would look at her as if she was a prostitute. And the reality, this is the thing that's I think it's so obvious on one hand, but I think it's really the missing piece for so much of the stuff in the manosphere. Like, people don't get it. It's that 10 to 20% of women have always been whores. They've always been whores. And we keep saying, like, women are whores today. It's like, no, you're just seeing whores mainstream. That's all. And yeah, everybody's numbers have gone up a little bit, or not even just necessarily like a little bit. But the point is that the amount of sex everyone's had has been lower, except for the whores. Like, that's the point here, right? But you're seeing just a normalization of it and even an elevation of it, and that's the problem. I'm reading Tolstoy right now. It's phenomenal. I mean, Tolstoy is one of my favorite authors, and I'd read Anna Karenina, and now I'm reading War and Peace. About a third of the way through. It's about a 1,600-word book, so it's very, very long. And one of the big things there is that all these elite men in Russian society, all the aristocrats, well, not all, but the vast majority of them, I mean, there's kind of a rite of passage for men to have slept with a prostitute, right? When they're younger and they haven't quite decided to get married, they haven't quite found the right pairing, it's very common that they'd go to the poorhouse and that they'd sleep with some women. There were plenty of women throughout history who were like that. It's always been like that. It always will be like that. So yeah, if she's sleeping with a different guy every week, I mean, think of her like a whore. And so if you decide to get serious with her, remember that. Remember what you're dealing with. I'm actually not going to say that you're not even going to have a good relationship. You could, if you know how to manage a girl like that, and there are some guys who do, you could actually have a good relationship. But you got to be fucking firm. Like, you have to be really rock solid. And if you do not have your shit figured out, that woman will eat you alive. She'll ruin your life. She'll ruin your life. Only pimps really understand how to handle those women, to be honest. You have to be a pimp to understand how to deal with a hoe. So, yeah, War and Peace, man. It's like, I think that Tolstoy is one of the few authors, I don't want to say few, but let's just say that Tolstoy understands men on a spiritual level. He understands the spiritual trajectory of men. I think that Tolstoy, and he's very, very honest about women and about their artifices, and he's for men who aspire to enter into a higher plane of existence. And in War and Peace, there's nothing better than War and Peace in terms of the thematics of it, because you go through this and you feel as men, as these different points, as they develop, you feel it. It's so great. It's so great. Yeah, exactly. There's so many different, I mean, people will tend to relate to one person more than another, but you can see bits of yourself in all these different men and their different moments and their different phases of life. It's phenomenal. He's a beautiful writer too. Helps if you speak French though, because the Russian nobility spoke in French. And so even though the Russians translated to English, the French is not translated. Neither is the German, but there's very minimal German. And fortunately for me, I speak French well enough to pretty much understand what's going on when they have these French phrases. It won't stop you from being able to read the book, but you'll miss a couple little things if you don't speak French. Anyway, all right. What got you into MBTI, and how has it helped you to effectively vet women? Well, the way I like to look at MBTI is it's a shortcut. It's a mental shortcut. Oh, oui, je parle un petit peu de français, mais c'est très mal et j'ai appris français en lycée. Anyway, whatever. I learned it in high school, but I took a little bit more in college. But just audited it, got me through Morocco. So MBTI, how has it helped me to effectively vet women? Well, I look at MBTI as a model. It's a shortcut. It's a shortcut for me. So once I understood enough about MBTI, I could tell that if I could get enough of a whiff of a girl to see that she had a certain couple of traits in common, she behaved in a certain way, and I had seen it in other girls who I had also labeled as that type, then I could easily do. It's like having a formula, right? Like in mathematics, okay, you have people go through all this time to create a proof so that they can have a formula that they can use. If you don't have the formula, you'd have to constantly, in every single math problem, go back to the basics and prove and go through it all in a really, really rough and long-term way. The benefit of having a formula is you have all these shortcuts, right? You don't have to try to prove by measurement that the hypotenuse is that, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? The hypotenuse is a squared plus, the formula, Pythagorean theorem. You don't have to go back and prove that by measuring the lines, right? Or however Pythagoras determined it. You just know the formula. And so it's the same thing with MBTI. Once you understand it and once you've seen enough of each type, especially the difference between the men and the women of each type, then you can do some pretty quick calculations about how they're going to act and how they're going to be. Now, I caution you, as usual, there's a lot of BS in MBTI. And I'd also caution you in the sense that, or maybe this isn't a caution, but it's just a fact, it's a point, that to a certain extent, it's not so important. And this is where people will be critical of MBTI, but to a certain extent, it's not so important how much you even really get the MBTI right, quote unquote. The point is that you have your own mental shortcut. You might see a pattern in a girl that you had connected to another type of girl, and you may be able to gain, and even if, like, let's say it's an ISTJ instead of a ISTP, right, or whatever, maybe they're two different types, and maybe someone disagrees about your analysis, for practical purposes, in terms of trying to figure out the person, it may not matter that much because you have your own calibration. And so that's one of the reasons that people will criticize MBTI, but let's be honest, at the end of the day, there is a lot of subjectivity around it. I mean, we have people who are more knowledgeable about this stuff than others, but we don't have something that's like a universal law. And so there's always going to be people who have disagreements. You see it all the time in the MBTI community. So the purpose of this is to use it as a tool, as shortcuts to understand people's psychology, and don't use it as like it's a tool, it's a model, it's not quote unquote the truth. Because the last thing I'll say is one of the traps I see with people is that they spend time arguing over what type is this person. And at that point, you're no longer trying to understand the person, you're trying to box them in. And that is a really, really big trap. That's when, it's like using a hammer to solve every problem. So MBTI can be useful, but if used incorrectly, it can also be a liability. So some points there. Okay, let's see. We got here a couple more questions. You had an old thread on men and women and energy. To corral libido to great acts, only give it in fair exchanges, right? I said that in regards to men and their energy relating to women. I love this idea. It's a constant battle. Well, first off, he wants me to expand more on that. Okay. But love this idea. It's a constant battle for me. Does it get easier? Well, short answer is that it does get a little easier for two reasons. First reason is that you get more used to it and you develop yourself more psychologically, which means you're less likely to go and feel the need to jerk off all the time because you understand the impulses behind that better. But also it gets easier because it's true, okay? It's true that when you're a young man, when you are between the ages of, 13 and 23, right? If you are under 25, you are going to, there was so much more, like I was so much hornier. And my testosterone's fine, but there's something about maybe the spikes when you're younger, or I don't know. I don't know exactly, but it's a big difference. And every guy, I'm 32 now. Every guy in the same at this same stage has said the same thing. It's like you're just not nearly as horny as you were when you were really young. So I do have sympathy for the younger guys because it's definitely harder. It's definitely much harder. I think the other point here is that as a result, masturbation, not that I'm not trying to condone it, but it's much more forgivable during that stage than it is when you're an older guy. When you're an older guy, if you're still doing it, like you really got to get that shit sorted out. You really got to get it sorted out. Because if you're still if you're in your late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you're still doing that, you're starting. I'm not trying to shame anyone. I don't want you to feel shame about this. I just want it to be a wake up call. It's got to stop. Like, you are way too old to be doing that stuff. You're way too old for it. Like, if you're like, I think your guys are 18 and they're struggling. It's like, dude, look, be a little bit kinder to yourself. You have all these hormones coming in. You don't have a lot of experience with women, and you're getting bombarded with porn. Like, it's understandable that you're going to have some of these things. Like, be kinder to yourself. But you should be wiser, and you should have more control as you're older. So get that sorted out. Yeah, basically, Joe, just to briefly touch upon that exchange, which you guys should check it out. It's an older thread. The sort of point behind it, this idea of it's basically that women are fundamentally takers of energy and men are fundamentally givers. Now that's not 100% correct, because women can give energy and men can take energy. But in terms of the fundamental trajectory of a man's energy, is that he is, just say that he's like an electrical charge, or he's dead, right? If he's a dead charge, women don't want him. If he is a full charge, women want him because women are the vessel. So women are looking to hold energy. They're mostly energy holders, right? And they use that energy for different purposes. You can consider them to be a battery of sorts, whereas a man is more of a cultivator and an engine. And so if a guy has low energy, then he's not going to be valuable to women. And this is one of the things that you see a lot with like really red pill guys, like really hardcore red pill people who are really bitter, and they're like, why did women do this to me? And you can't trust women. I can look at them and I can see these guys are low energy. Like, they have no resilience. And I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm just saying a fact that their obsession indicates that they don't have resilience, and that there is a reason why it happened to them. Like, if they walked into a room, no one would notice. Or they would notice that this person was like self-conscious and trying to show off or whatever. Like, people wouldn't be like, hey, this person's warm, this person's exciting to be around. No guy who's actually like that bitches about women. They just don't do it. They don't do it because their energy is enough that even if a woman fucks them over and takes their energy away, they'll build it back. But a lot of these guys, they pretty much barely had anything, and the women were settling for them. From the very beginning, the women were settling for them. And that's the truth they don't want to hear, is that she settled for you, and she left you because you were a fucking, like, weesh piece of shit who didn't really, I'm being really harsh now. I'm being too harsh. But you never really contributed what she wanted. And there's a lot of guys who have high energy, and a lot of my clients are like this. They are guys that have a high vibration, but they have these pockets of damage that had allowed them to get caught with bad women, or made them feel, for instance, a little bit inadequate towards women, But I don't worry about these guys long term because their energy is actually like they are going. I mean, if they deal with these pockets, like they have tons and tons of stuff there that women are going to be drawn to. But there's just so many guys who I just really, I hate to say it, but there's so many guys. There's just nothing. There's no spark to them. And for women, I mean, there's nothing that's for a woman who doesn't ask for much, doesn't then that can be an okay dynamic. But women are never really happy with that. They're never happy with these guys. I just wish guys would look more inward into themselves and take more ownership over how this stuff occurs. But yeah, a great woman is going to help relax you so you don't lose energy to pointless things, right? And then she takes her cut. And her cut is good sex, financial resources, which is basically energy transmuted into, money is time, and all that stuff is connected to energy, okay? And third, your attention. That you're going to pay attention to her and treat her well, right? That's really what women want. They want you to want to spend time with them and care about them, right? Protect them, protect their feelings, not protect their feelings like to be soft on them, but like to protect them and to consider them. And they want you to fuck them well so that they come and that sex is enjoyable for them. And so that when they get your seed, that it feels really good to them. And they want you to provide for them so that they are not dependent. And I saw this on Nabil Aziz, great guy, and he had something on Facebook, and someone commented about this, and he said basically for a guy, like he was mentioning these three things, and he said, be excellent at 2 and good at 1. And women have their own inverse of that, and it's 100% correct. I mean, you don't have to be excellent at all 3 to be a good partner, because we all have our weaknesses, right? Like if you are somebody who can connect emotionally well with your woman, and you're a strong, fit guy, and you're financially providing for the family in a very good way, and you're good in bed, right? Then she's going to be so happy with you. You don't have to be some crazy sex god. Right? Guys get insecure about this stuff, but those are the 3 criteria, and it's very similar for guys. It's very similar for guys, except for the provisioning portion. It's more for a woman. It's more like, you could say it's cooking. You could say it's I don't want to specify it to specific things, but let's say feminine acts of service, that she's going to be able to do things that allow you to provision, right? So it's the inverse here. So if you're provisioning, she's doing things that make it easier for you to provision on a more material basis. So yeah, a great woman, when she protects her energy in that sense, then she gets her cut no problem, because she gives it back to you, especially if she's good in bed herself, and then you get more energy from that sexual experience. So it's good stuff. All right, next question. Okay. Pretty Woman, Pretty Woman movie. I've written about this before. Pretty Woman movie is an INTJ ENFP dynamic. Is this whole story a blue pill fantasy? Could it happen in reality? And could such a couple actually manifest itself with proper support, like your coaching? So let me give you a little brief recap about Pretty Woman. Pretty Woman is about this very, very wealthy, we're talking like triple-digit millionaire, probably, certainly high double-digit millionaire guy, played by Richard Gere. And I'm going to forget some little details here, but basically Julia Roberts is a prostitute, more like an escort. No, I guess she's a prostitute. And she's doing it out of desperation. And there's a lot of like high profile stuff going on with Richard Gere in terms of business and whatnot. And he needs to show off a pretty woman. And so he takes this girl, which he pretty much picked up off the street, and she sort of proves herself to him as she's very like just bubbly and doesn't really even want his money. And so he starts to kind of use her for this business deal, that pretending that they're together. And so he's treating this woman to this really big life of luxury, etc. But then she's like, she wanted something. She really didn't want the money in the end. She wanted his love and blah blah blah. He makes it, and then he goes after her and they get together. Okay, whatever. You get the basic idea, right? So is it a blue pill fantasy? Well, I mean, I would not. Let's just say that I would not bet on a situation like that. I wouldn't strategize such a situation. I think that if you tried to plan something like that, then you'd be totally in delusional land. But I will say that in the context of the story provided and how things unfold. And guys, watch the movie if you haven't. I haven't ruined it for you because I forgot details. Like, it's a really good movie. It's a really good movie. I think that story arc is very believable. It's very believable because the crucial variable here is that the woman doesn't want his money and is willing to act on not wanting his money. Right? This is a crucial variable. And to be fair, in the movie, Julia Roberts was never like a natural prostitute. Like, she was doing it out of desperation. And they frame her so that she's really more of a romantic who's been sort of forced into this role. And they don't even really try to make it look like she has some pretty serious mileage on her compared to like some of her coworkers who are legitimate whores. So there's a lot of like very specific context and nuance to this that make the story believable. Now, if you were to go pick up a whore and say, hey, I want to treat you well, and we'll just go on seeking arrangements and see how well it turns out. I don't think it's a good way to start a dynamic. It's something that would have to unfold in a very, very specific context and serendipitously. And then maybe it could. Like, I believe that from the way that the movie portrays it, I believe that their connection was genuine, right? Because it was very clear that Julia Roberts was not in it for the money. And once the money was removed from the situation, there could be more of a focus on the actual connection, which is one of the reasons why you're really foolish if you think that you're going to find love on seeking arrangements. I'm not saying that guys haven't found good flings and good fun, but it's just, you would have to really see how a girl is going to act in that. But remember that she's going on there for that purpose. So you have to be very, very cautious, guys. Be very cautious. I won't say it won't happen. It can't happen. I'm just going to say it's very cautious. So we got a motor over there. Hope it's not too loud. All right, last question. Read in Red Pill Forum, a guy is unhappy with a sexless marriage. He slept with a prostitute. His wife ended up treating him better. Did she smell this on him? How does it influence her behavior? This is an interesting story. So, of course, implicit in this is that the wife did not know about the prostitute, but after the guy slept with the prostitute, her behavior changed towards him. She became a lot better, right? So some people said that this is you're not gay, all right? It's good stuff. That some people were wondering about, was this a product of her smelling him sleeping with other women, and is that the reason that her behavior changed and she started to have unconscious sort of competition? Well, it could be that. I mean, women certainly could be partially that, let's say, because women certainly do smell when you've been with other women, and so it's possible that came into the equation. But guys, the main reason that she was probably different is because this guy was putting all of this need for sex on her. this suppressed resentment and need for sex on his wife, who wasn't giving it to him. And so he went to a prostitute. And when he did that, he took away the need for sex from his wife, which then allowed him to not be as much of a bitch around her. Right? And this is what all comes back to the thing about controlling your sexual energy. You can't control your sexual energy. You can't have a good relationship. You can't do it because you're going to be controlled by the fact that you can stick your dick in a woman. And guys will try to compensate for this by saying they're not going to get into a serious relationship. They want to keep it open. They want to spin plates. But this is all distracting from the fundamental issue here, which is that you can't control your sexual energy, which is why you are obsessed with the fact that you need to have a back door where you can stick your dick if one isn't going to give it to you. And that's why, like I say, it's not about trying to win a bad game. It's about trying to play a different game. And the different game is that you're good with your sexual energy. Now, of course, if she's never gonna sleep with you, then you can go sleep with somebody else. But the reality here is that it's the wrong kind of question. It's the wrong kind of question here. It's the wrong question. Like, the relationship shouldn't be going in that direction. Like, your need is the issue. Your need is the issue. And so that's what she sensed in the relationship. No question. She sensed that he was no longer being passive aggressive and kind of like subtly angling himself like, oh, so are you going to have sex with me now? Right? He was not doing that anymore. And she's like, maybe this guy isn't as much of a bitch anymore. So anyway, very, very quick. Any questions here? Any questions? I just got into a relationship. Got any advice for me? Control your sexual energy. Otherwise, it's quite vague. But let's see here. Good wine for newcomers. I'm gonna try to figure this. You guys can ask more questions. I'm thinking about this. It's a Pinot Noir. Mayomi. Try Mayomi. I'm gonna write it in here. Mayomi. This is a little bit more standard brand. Mayomi. It's not super expensive, but I think it does a really good job for just as like a basic California wine, and it's not going to be really sweet, but it's not going to be. I think it has a little bit of residual sugar, or at the very least, it's fruity enough that it's a good gateway drug. Okay, if you were gay, you would be, but you're not gay, so you're not. That's good to know. Good to know. Well, I love these guys. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions here. So I guess that's it. Take care, guys. I'll see you later.